And some of you may have noticed there's a different voice today. Sam is up today. I believe he is engaged in other activities, but I am one of the new guys on the OpenFGA team in community engagement. So we'll be driving today's community call.
Hi, everyone.
More folks are joining. Great. Welcome, folks. We'll get started in just a minute. All right, got a few more people who just joined. Welcome, folks. And I think we're just about ready to get started. All right, folks, welcome to the October community meeting. I am Caleb Hunter. I am one of the two new folks on the OpenFGA team for community engagement. We'll do that intro in just a second, but I just want to take a moment to say welcome to everybody. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to join us. Before we actually here, so I'll just run through the agenda real quickly. We'll do introductions. If you haven't had an opportunity to introduce yourself before, you're new, we would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us what you're working on and what brought you here and how far you are on your OpenFGA journey. We'll cover what we've just shipped. We're going to have 3 demos today. Hopefully we'll get a chance to get to them all. We'll do a review of our current work and the work that's coming up, and our community news, as well as Q&A at the end. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll be able to try to get to them as quickly as possible. And we would love for you to start our project. We are a growing project. We would love for other people to hear about it. And so in order to gain visibility, if you star our repo, it will help us greatly. So we've added the link, and we would love it if you would give us a star. So as you see, we have a pretty broad OpenFGA team. Some of us work on the core, some of us work on the tools, some of us work in community development and engagement. We are all here on the Slack to be able to help engage, try to solve challenges where they pop up at. But again, we always love community feedback. So if you have questions, if you have suggestions, please feel free to engage in discussions. We've included the links. We will definitely get back to you as soon as we can. We would love for you to ask questions in Slack. So anytime that we can be of assistance, please reach out to us across our community channels. So we're at intros now. So as I mentioned, my name is Caleb Hunter. I am in Manhattan. I'm in New York City. I'm part of the OpenFGA team that's focused on community engagement. So I, along with my teammate Ryan, you'll see us popping up a lot in the chats, as well as discussions and issues. We are sort of the first line of the folks that you'll interact with when you are seeking out assistance, but there's a ton of eyes on everything that we're working on. So a lot of us see everything that pops up. I am previously an employee of Google and IBM and DevRel, and had an opportunity to work in quite a few different tracks on a DevRel journey. And in terms of OpenFGA, One of the things that I'm actually working on right now is a product demo. So we can look forward to talking about that soon. Ideally, we'll have an opportunity to post and review that very shortly. But I would say it's definitely been an interesting journey, especially learning modeling as well. So for those of you who ever have modeling questions, we'll do our best to try to answer those. If there's anybody else who would like to introduce yourselves, please go ahead.
Maybe I can say hello. I'm Martin. Nice to meet everyone. I'm based in Berlin with an engineering team here. We focus a lot on Auth0 and Okta when this is the catalyst for following OpenFGA since I guess last year, predominantly as a solution for more complex authorization use cases. So yeah, I'm happy to join and listen in and hoping to maybe bring a demo or perhaps a pilot to a future community meeting.
Awesome. Thanks, Martin. Yeah, we always love demos. If anyone has a demo that they're either if a particular use case that they're working on currently or a demo that they would like to show during a community meeting, please reach out. Let us know. We will definitely add you to a list and get a time slot if that works for you. If there's anyone else who'd like to introduce themselves.
I could take a short shout out. My name is Eric. Based in Lisbon, work at Grafana. So we are trying to move our authorization into OpenFGA and taking that journey from like super complex to something constrained and in a new type of engine. And OpenFGA allows us to do that. So we'll probably have some demo soon, but it's a big project, let's say. So nice to hear that we can demo that eventually.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Eric. And yeah, definitely. I know that the folks at Grafana have been super supportive of the work that we're doing. And so again, if you guys have feedback, I know that you guys have specific contacts within our team, but please always feel free to reach out. We are definitely here to help support you and anyone else on the call who are looking at developing solutions utilizing OpenFGA. Anyone else want to say hello, introduce themselves?
I can go next.
All right.
Hey folks, so we've been I'm Yanis. I'm from Latvia, but I work for a US-based startup. It's Series A funded procurement startup, and yeah, and we've been interested in like doing a lot of OpenFGA in production. I think since very early on. So yeah, that's my
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. And do a last call if anyone else wants to introduce themselves. And also thank you guys for those who hadn't introduced yourselves. I know, especially on an open call, it's always like, do I want to say hello? But we definitely want to make this a warm and friendly place. So everyone is welcome. We'd love to hear what you're working on. Once, twice. All right. So we've just released version 1.6.1 and version 1.6.2. We've added SQLite support. So we just want to say thank you both to Dan and Grafana for your assistance on that. And we've done some performance improvements as well. We've recently also done some fixes for OpenTelemetry across all the SDKs. So if you are utilizing OpenTelemetry, hopefully, any challenges that you've had have been ironed out. But again, if anything pops up, please just let us know. All right, so we're going to go into our demos now. So we'll start off with modular authorization with Ragged from our team. So Ragged, I will let you go ahead and take over.
Hey folks. So if you were here in the last community call, you may have seen me try to demo this and failed. Hopefully this time it'll be better. So I'll just quickly introduce what we're working on. We're trying to bring access control into OpenFGA. So to allow you, Right now, any API token, any client ID you have has access to everything. So one of the things requested a lot is like, no, I want to have my to restrict whether to do maybe just reads or to be able to write specific things. And what better way to have access control than to use OpenFGA? So we're using OpenFGA underneath the hood to power access control for OpenFGA. And I'll basically quickly go through what we're doing. Note that this is right now, or will be going out in an experimental phase without like the bells and whistles of how to bootstrap. So bootstrapping might be a bit not quick and easy. Like might have a few steps. So that's just only in the experimental phase as we collect more of your feedback, and definitely we'll be looking for your feedback now and as you start using this more. Quickly for now, enabling access control will require you to have OIDC set up. So if you have no authentication, I mean, obviously, if you have no authentication, you can't enable authorization. But also, if you use API tokens, we want like you can't enable access control. If you have OIDC set up, if you have client IDs, that's when like right now being able to enable access control works. For the sake of the demo here, I already have enabled OIDC. I have like a random issuer. This is using Auth0. You don't need to, whatever IDP you're using works, but you do have to enable OIDC. And again, for the sake of my demo, I've created two client IDs, kind of a root management client ID that I will use to kind of create stores and to give other clients permissions. And I'm gonna have a per project client ID that I'm gonna use for specific projects. You'll be able to see the client ID secret here. So I'm gonna be using these two. You'll see me flip between them, the project and the root config. Ignore the secret, I'll rotate it after. So first of all, what do we need to do? Importantly, because we don't have bootstrapping in yet, you have to have access control disabled. Otherwise, you'll be locked out. So if you say access control enabled without doing the bootstrapping parts, of course, you will not be able to access. It is experimental, so you have to turn on the experimental flag. And sorry if you can't see what I'm. Let me zoom in. So you're just gonna say, okay, enable this flag. This allows you to work with access control. It does not enable access control. This flag will be going away once we have this in production, and these are the actual controls you'll be using. So right now, I have access control disabled. Let me spin up OpenFGA. Okay, great. Again, I have these two client IDs. So first things first, I want to create the model and the store I'm gonna use for access control. And this is what we have. Basically, we have a system and an admin on the system. This is to allow you to have that root client, which will be able to do everything. And currently, only the system can be able to create, store, and list stores. You want to have more people be able to list stores, you can modify this up to you. So this is a sample model. What we require is it must have the system type, some of these types, as in the can call create. All the cans you see here are required, as well as the system. Basically, that's it. Everything else you can play with. But again, so this is the system. This is the model we're going to be using for our FGA on FGA. We also have a module. You've probably worked with, or maybe you've worked with the modular approach where you can split your model across modules. If not, we'll link in the chat in a bit, like how to do that. But basically, our CLI gives you the option to break your DSL down into separate modules, allow it to assign code owners per module. This takes that to the next level. This uses the modules you're using to now give client IDs access to call, to write specific modules. For example, we're going to use like Atlassian as an example. You may want to give the client ID for the Jira team to be able to write modules related to the Jira, but not tuples related to Jira, but not tuples related to Confluence. So each team will be able to only write tuples that they are owners of. And for onboarding, we're gonna say this root client ID is gonna be the admin. So this is where we're gonna do to initialize and start using access control. So again, let's start, and we're gonna create the root store. Note, access control is right now disabled. So we're just starting with this. So first of all, we're creating the root store ID. We're gonna, root store. We're gonna create a store for this random project, Atlassian in this case. We're gonna create the model for access control. So this is the one writing the root model as well as this tuple. So we just did that here. Now, all we need to do is turn on access control. We're done. We're done bootstrapping. We need to turn on access control. So let's go back to the Docker Compose file here. We want to enable it. This is the store ID, and this is the model ID. And let's restart the server. Okay, now we're gonna try to get the Atlassian store, so the store we created for Atlassian, with our root client ID. Again, the one that's admin on everything. It's admin on everything, so it'll be able to do that. When we try with the Atlassian store ID, and sorry, I'm using Atlassian, they have no knowledge of this project, it's just an example. But when we use the client ID we're using for this project, we won't be able to get it. We don't have access, basically. So what we're gonna do is use the root client, the one that's admin, to grant ourselves access. And we do that by writing a tuple that says application, this client ID, which is the project ID, can read this, is a reader on the store. What is a reader? A reader can do all the reader things here. So it can call the get, check, expand, all these functions. So, sorry, that is my problem because I did not do this first. Okay, so we just granted this client ID access to this store only as reader. Let's try getting the store again. Also, as a project. We're not root anymore. And now, yeah, now we have access to get it. We'll try writing. So this project wants to write a model to continue. It fails because we only have reader access. We haven't given ourselves access to write the model. So let's do that. We can now write the model. Okay, now that we're done with writing the model, let's run some checks. Note that we are reader, so we should be able to run some checks. And yeah, it works. This is false. We're trying to check if Anne is a member of this organization. Let's say we wanted this check to return true. What do we need to do? We need to write a tuple. That fails because we don't have access to write a tuple. We're both a reader and a model writer. We're not allowed to write tuples. Let's just confirm for this other tuple. Can we write? No. So what we're gonna do here is grant permission not to write all tuples, just to write tuples of a specific module. So what we're saying here is this project we have, this project client ID, is now a writer not to the whole store, not to all the tuples, only to the modules of type confluence, the modules that are confluence. And we wrote that. So if you go back to, I should probably have gone through this, but this is the confluence module. So this is what we're working with. So, sorry, not sure what that is. The space is of type confluence, and let's versus organization is of like the module core, and let's see how that changes things. We granted ourselves the right to this space, to the confluence. So let's write that tuple, and it's working now. Let's try again to write to the core, which again, organization is of module core. It's still not working. So we now have access to write only particular tuples. And of course, we can change that by saying, all right, now you have this one. If you want to grant yourself access to write all tuples, you don't care about modules, you can still do that. And can we write? Yes, we can write again. That was, sorry, not a quick overview, but I see some people have questions. Someone has their hand raised.
Yeah, we had two. We can start with the person who has their hand raised. You're listed as iPhone.
I'm not able to see clearly. It's not letting me zoom in.
Oh, sorry. Is that everyone or?
I don't know. It's just I can't really see it.
Yeah, he seems to be on an iPhone, so probably you need a.
Oh, is that the issue?
No, it's just probably he's sharing his desktop, right? So it's probably too small
Ah,
to.
Yeah, maybe scaled down.
Yeah.
okay. Let me give that a try. Thank you.
Gerline has a question. If I leave out the model ID, does it pick up the latest one? Yes. Like this normal functions underneath the hood as a normal OpenFGA instance. But that comes with our normal problems. If you don't provide a model ID, you're gonna have some performance problems because we're not able to cache the model. So when you give a model ID, we can cache it, so you have better performance there.
But is it only on the startup or on every request you are going to fetch the latest model?
So no, it is not on every request, but on every few requests. So because in latest, if you keep looking for it, at some point we switch it. So it's not like fetched once and then stopped. It will be cached a bit, but it will keep changing. Again, just like normal OpenFGA installation, there's nothing different.
I have one more question if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
So correct me if I'm wrong, if I understand this correctly. The way to implement access control at the tuple level, for example, if I want one of my clients to only be able to perform some actions on this specific type, the way to do is using modules.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so it's at the module level, not at the tuple level. So whatever, if there are multiple types in the single module, the application will be able to operate on all of them.
Yeah. And that's feedback we want to hear. So if that doesn't work for you, or you prefer more fine-grained access, even, yes, let's talk about that. This is our initial implementation, and we do want to evolve it as we get more feedback. We are releasing it in experimental mode initially, without the bootstrapping and without giving you even like the model. We're going to give you this example model, just so that you can tell us, okay, what works for you, what more do you need, and how would you prefer to bootstrap it, all these things. So definitely we're looking for feedback.
So on our end, we are going to implement something where each client, whoever calls to OpenFGA, like it goes through our own service. So each client will have like an allow list of types they can play with. So this is exactly something we are looking at. We are looking at tuple level access control. But I think even with modules, that is possible if you kind of split the modules. Like you have to create so many modules, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, in general, the way we're thinking about it is that if you want to have a specific client permissions to write to a specific set of types, is because those are the types that application owns in a certain way, right? And combine and defining that as a module is kind of a good abstraction to define those. Maybe we see scenarios when, yeah, that is not flexible enough, and we can always add another level, which is per type, right? So the tuple will say you can do this per type. That is possible. And in this case, it will imply that whenever we do the check, and we kind of need to take that into consideration, right? But not just the module, but the type, but it's totally possible.
Okay.
Yeah. In a future iteration, assuming like this is what we want to do, we could do something like this, like where we introduce a type and like continue down this path.
So for this, like you need to enable OIDC, right? There's no way around.
Yes. I mean, we considered for API tokens. Right now, we really don't want to store API tokens in the database. So if we do something for API tokens, it'll be like we need to introduce something to identify them. So there's an identifier that's different from the token itself that you can store in the database. And that's why we don't want to deal with API tokens right now before we validate everything else. And OIDC makes this easier. One more thing to say, where are we getting the client ID? So you have OIDC, but where are we getting the client ID? We're adding a configuration to say you can choose which claim to use. So if you want to use user ID instead of client ID, you're free to do that. You can, by default, we're gonna look at client ID in the claim and then AZP in the claim, because there's two RFCs, each one claims something. So we'll use those. You'll be able to pass in configuration an array, and we'll go in order. So if we can find the first in the claim in the token, we'll use it and keep going. So you can say like, oh, I want to use user ID if available. If not, client ID. We will use that.
Okay. I'm not gonna take all of the time, but for here, like, so the way we use it is OpenFGA is behind a service, and only that service is allowed to talk to OpenFGA. Every other services goes through that service. So I don't think OIDC makes sense in this case. We use API tokens. It would be nice if some way that service can provide, okay, hey, like this is the client that is trying to do something. Here is the ID.
That's very possible. Yeah, we can talk about it like outside, but yes, basically you'll have to implement your own. Sorry, I don't know what's happening on the. Someone is.
Yeah, I've been trying to zoom
uh,
in.
I'll stop sharing. So you'll be able to. I mean, if you're implementing your own checks, you can. You can use contextual tuples to provide the client ID in that case, or something like that. But we can definitely chat more about it. Like,
Yeah, but that's something that we kind of, it makes sense, right? So if you're using API tokens, we should be able to let you use the feature, right? So that's something that is part of a future iteration of how we handle that. Right? Another one is, how do you want to handle these permissions between like clients and modules and permissions? And one scenario there is you want to handle this with configuration, right? So you have like a YAML file that says this client can perform these actions in the store instead of the API, right? So how will the bootstrap of that work, right? Because like we need to kind of create a store somehow with that content and use it for authorization. So we are also discussing a few alternatives of how to manage that.
That actually would be very nice because, like, if you want to take like an overview of what client is allowed to do what, a configuration file definitely helps with that instead of going to the database listing out everything.
Yeah, and we still need to load that in a store. And if you're using Postgres, right, we need to when the service starts, we need to kind of create a store and put that data. The issue is that we can start a lot of OpenFGA services at the same time, so that will create a problem, right? You might create multiple stores and have some kind of race conditions there. The other way we are discussing it is, what if we let you specify for a specific store, you use a specific storage adapter, and we use the in-memory store for this one. So now each module just loads store with that data, right, in memory, and doesn't go to the database to do this check, so it's going to be faster, and we don't have, it's easier to address that. But today in OpenFGA, we don't have a way to say the storage adapter is per server and not per store.
Yeah.
So we need to somehow find a way to configure that.
That makes sense. That was good work, man. Like, props to you.
Thanks.
All right. So if anyone has any other questions, please go ahead and add them in chat. And I want to go ahead and roll over to our next one, which is going to be client-side caching. Rugged, you're going to be up again.
Hello again. Okay. So, wait, no, that's the wrong. Yeah. So we've been thinking about like caching, and like caching is a big topic. Performance in general is a big topic in our team, and we're trying to attack it from several places, both at the API level and at the SDK level. And caching is definitely something that helps with performance. The more caching you have, the better your performance. But caching on the client grants us ability to do a bit more than what on the server. Its ability to be kind of fine-grained and like letting you provide your own functions for how and when we cache. This is an example for the Go SDK. It's a POC, so don't please, nothing is set in stone, not the DX and that. But what the base of it is, we'll let you provide your own cache. So long as it satisfies a particular interface we have, you can bring in your own cache. You want to use memcache, you want to use Redis, you want to use in-memory, you want to use all three, up to you. Go wild, basically. So you will be giving us your own kind of cache, man. You'll be initializing and giving to us. Also, on each check request, in the POC, we're only dealing with check. We can do the same for list objects and list users, but right now we're focusing on check for this POC. So for check, you will be able to pass a cache control function that will take the request as input, and basically be able to, based on the request, give us what the TTL you want is. So you could say things like, for the CEO, you don't expect they're going to be changing every day. The cache those for longer, cache them for a day. For things that are less security risky, let's say photos, cache them for 30 minutes. And for like that one particular document that has all the secrets, don't cache it. Always return TTL of 0. This is what the cache control function allows you to do. Basically, you will be giving you the request. It'll take the request as input, and it will be able to give us back what is it that you want. So what is the TTL you want for that particular request? That gives you like really that kind of fine-grained, not authorization, fine-grained cache control. Okay, so this is an example app for caching. So we're initializing the cache manager. You'll be able to do this yourself, but in this particular field, it has both an in-memory cache and external Redis cache, it will look internally, and if it can't find it internally, it go to Redis. If it can't find in Redis, then it will go to OpenFGA. So that's it. So let's go through this. What is this gonna do? We're basically configuring FGA, and we're gonna configure the cache and just pass it into the client. And we'll write a few tuples and run a couple of requests, 10,000 in our case. Here, a few for Becky, a few for Carl, and a few for Dan. All right. So let's do that. Yeah, you can see almost everything was cached. You will notice some things like Carl was also cached. Why? This is because I ran this a while back, less than an hour ago. So this is coming from Redis, not from the internal cache. I can just to illustrate how this would be different. If we're not caching, well, that's wrong. Okay, so my cache invalidation is not working, but the idea was you'll be able to cache almost everything. You'll see the time to run 10,000 cache checks was almost instantaneous. And in the case of Dan here, where we wanted the cache to be 0, so in the case of Dan, we were 0. It was not being cached, so we were hitting false, getting it cached every time. So yeah, we have a bug in the invalidation where it's not expiring on the second request, but basically these are always true because we set the cache for an hour. That's basically it. What we want to know from you is, do you have a need? Like, does this help you? Would you what more do you want to do in caching? Will be if we have like a POC, a very early POC, would you be willing to try it and test it and like give us feedback? These sorts of that's what we have for now. But yeah, and we have like a POC for Go and for JS for people who want to try.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if this is only in Go. And so this is in SDK layer.
Yes,
Yep.
this is all in the SDK layer, so not on the API. And the idea of having it's not unlocked by us. Like you can do it by through those external tools, where the idea of having both an in-memory and external cache allows you to get the best of both worlds. Caching in memory means much faster response time, but it means you can't cache a lot because I mean, you'd run out of memory. But you still want to not like caching in Redis helps with that, but so caching in both at the same time is like kind of the best of both worlds, and this definitely unlocks that.
So you're doing this on the SDK side, so that means the client side.
Yes.
Which correct me if I'm wrong, that means you're caching the final check results. You're not caching the sub problems that the check has evaluated.
Yes. So this is like, yeah, the cache, the subproblem caching is a different workstream we are working on, but this is particularly on the SDK side.
Okay. And how are you handling invalidations through, whenever tuples are created, deleted?
So the tuples invalidation won't be per tuple. We may in the future add that in like invalidation locally based on added tuples, but right now caching is purely based on TTL. So you'll be able to give us that TTL, and based on that we'll cache. You can override the TTL, so you can cache, for example, for 1 hour, but if the subsequent request says 3 minutes and more than 3 minutes have passed, we should invalidate, and that's the part you saw not working in my demo. But the idea is each request will specify its own TTL, and based on that, we will either use the cached value if it's still valid, or like drop it if it's not valid.
Okay.
I remember, Gulin, that you were doing client-side caching for, I think, was for the permissions that a user can perform in the UI, right?
Yes. So because we have this layer in front of OpenFGA, we cache everything. And because we control how tuples are created and deleted by the services, we have like instant invalidation as well. So if a tuple is, let's say, deleted, we have tags for all the cached items in our cache for the object and the user. And then we go out and just invalidate everything that's cached related to that tuple.
Interesting. So we might want to talk to you a little more about how you're doing that.
Yeah.
And that's something that makes sense for us to introduce here, because you are doing that on top on a service that wraps FGA, right? Or on top of that service.
So there's FGA, and then there is this access control service that does all this caching and validation stuff.
Okay. So if we support it in the SDK, that would work, but you need to support the semantics that you want, right?
Yeah, we're basically looking for invalidations as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
We will have to do it in a way that's that will work for all, like basically still giving you the control, because we don't know, the client, the SDK does not know how the model affects the tuples.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In the future, it might. So that's future work. But for now, we need to give you access because you know this. So being able to invalidate them yourself. And like, yeah, as Andrea said, we'd love to talk to you more about that.
Good. Awesome. So we are running out of time. So, but we have our last demo, which is not going to be short, but let's try to go through that and then we kind of wrap it up.
We can do a lightning round. And if we need to, maybe we can't show everything today, but maybe next time.
Okay. All right.
Cool. Do you mind if I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Great. So I'm going to give some context, and then Joshua is going to be the one doing the demo. We have been trying to work hard to deliver more value around a problem that we call search with permissions. It's a relatively simple problem to understand, but it's quite complex to actually implement. And so we have a document online that kind of walks through the options that you can do with search with permissions. But the goal of it is I want to be able to search or list all of the documents that a specific user is allowed to see as a viewer. And then being able to then respond back with the permissions that they're able to see, and then combining it with your own database data. So there's a couple of options that are listed there. You know, one of them is do a search and then just make a bunch of checks. The other one is to build a local index, and you can kind of think of what we're going to show today as like another option, but it's getting closer to this, helping you build a better local index. What we've done is we've created a SQL query generator that would be able to basically convert your model into a SQL query that a specific service would be able to use. There's not many services that can do what is required for search with permissions, specifically when it comes to like recursive CTEs, etc. But we were able to use one that's called Materalize. And so I'll kind of just show example of what we're trying to do, and then I'm going to get Joshua to demo it. So basically you would run this command, and then from there, this is basically saying you're giving it a model. I want to create an index off of the document viewer, and then from there it would create it. So this is the authorization model, and then it would generate a query that would then be able to use any service, and in this case it would be Materalize. So as other services are able to kind of do what we need to do or what you need to do, we could add more kind of dialects in a sense. This is kind of like the overall architecture. So you still have your application. You would still be using OpenFGA. You would use this query generator to be able to create the SQL, and then you would pass that to a service, in this case, Materalize. You would need to sync the tuples, like the whatever is written, with that service, and then be able to kind of create indexes and hopefully be able to use those for search. So with that being said, I'm going to try to turn it over to Joshua for a demo.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. All right. Gotta move some stuff here. All right, so we'll start with a pretty simple model. I'll show you what I'll be working with. So just basically a user type and a document type with a viewer relationship that can be a user. So we'll start with just running the command very simply. There's a few additional options to what Tyler had shown. When we generate, we can provide a normalized tuple view, which can be useful for when you're integrating it directly with the Postgres database in OpenFGA. And then we can also provide some indexes, and those indexes can help speed up the queries against the defined view. So we're going to omit those for now, just for the sake of simplicity. And so I've put those flags in there to omit those. And then we have the view name. So you give it a name that you find reasonable, that you can remember and want to use later. And then you define the relations that you, like as Tyler had shown, you define the relations that you want to index so that you aren't indexing everything, because doing so could be very expensive and taxing. And then you have the model file, which in my case is just model here. So we're going to be indexing the document viewer relation in the model that was presented. So just go ahead and run that. So the output here isn't that readable. So I'm going to bring it into another view here, and we'll format it. So basically, you can see that this is just a view creation query. It does require some mutual recursive CTEs in order to operate. This particular one doesn't, but we do typically use it in most of the output. But you can see that what it's doing is defining a document viewer CTE, and it's basically just selecting anything that's a document viewer and user, and so then you'll just get those tuples. So that was pretty simple, a really contrived example. Doesn't, again, require recursion here necessarily, but I have a more complex version to show you using, we'll do a user with groups now, and groups can have other groups that are parents of that group. And then we have documents, which can have direct users or can have groups or members of other groups be viewers. So that's a hierarchical relationship there. So I'll go ahead and run this one. And we get a little bit more than we had last time. So we'll go ahead and copy. It's likely not all going to fit on one screen. Yeah. But here, we're actually going to have some recursion going on in the CTEs. So again, it's just a basic view that you can run and create. It does have a few more CTEs that are involved in creating this. So first thing it will do is it will create the document viewer CTE entry point. And then we have a few different select statements, one for just compiling all of the document viewers that are users or groups. So it's grabbing the first set of tuples, unioning that with another set of tuples, and then unioning that with another set of tuples. You can see here that this one right here for group member is going to be referencing another one of the CTEs. Where is that? Oh, I'm not seeing it right here, but I have to look through this. But essentially, yeah, that's it. It just creates the SQL, and you run it and throw it in the Materalize, and Materalize will incrementally compute any changes as you add tuples to the base table. And this view will be kept up to date relatively quickly, depending upon the complexity of the model. So that's what I had. Any questions?
So the goal of all of this is to be able to convert an authorization model into a usable SQL that can be used in some of these platforms. So Materialize describes itself as like an operational data warehouse. So it allows to be able to like incrementally compute these permission changes so that if you add one change at the top of the graph, it has consequences all the way down the graph. And so it should just try to flatten that hierarchical graph into a kind of simple table that can then be joined with your own database. So the goal is to make those lookups faster using a service like Materialize.
As for running these SQL, creating those views, the migrations, is there any recommended way, or you just run it on your database on your own?
Yeah, you would run it on Materialize. If you had a subscription with Materialize, you would set up the entire base table and all of that according to the documentation that would be associated with this command. And after you've got all that initial setup and you've got your FGA database set up as a source, it will start collecting tuples into the root, and you can basically just run this view within Materialize, and it will create it and begin populating based upon the tuples that you've provided.
Okay.
And the reason that you wouldn't be able to do it in your own database or like in Postgres and such is because it doesn't have kind of full support for incremental view update, where it's just like I make one write and it only changes one, like a little bit part of the graph. And so that's where these services kind of, these third-party services are able to do that efficiently.
Right. And to explain it a little bit further, when you flatten out this index, you're basically doing an expansion on the tuples. So if the tuple is in a hierarchy, like let's say it's part of a group that's a parent of a group that's a parent of a group that's a parent of a group, it will add the tuple at the level where you add it, but it'll also add a tuple for each additional level within that hierarchy for that user, let's say. So you exponentially increase the amount of volume of tuples that you're storing and calculating with each change, whether it's a delete or an addition. So we need that incremental compute to be fast and keep it consistent.
Awesome. So we will make sure to have all of this shared out in our Slack, and we'll keep going with the rest of the presentation. Just 1 second here. There we go. All right. So now we'll cover up what we're doing now and next.
Yeah, so you've seen demos of some of these features already in this meeting or the previous one. So we've been working with performance improvements. We shared some of the improvements in the last couple of meetings. Still working on adding more, so performance will keep improving. Some of them are enhancements in the algorithms that we are following to resolve checks for now. Later will be in list objects, and also in our caching strategy to increase the chances of having cache hits for multiple requests. And actually, we merged something to OpenFGA after the last release. So the next one, those changes will be included. We shared the work that we're trying to do with search with permissions, ranking them on OpenFGA authorization options. The last time we demo integration with Envoy, and we also have a POC already that we haven't demoed, but we'll demo the next time. Hopefully, we demo the full feature shipped for doing batch checks in the server itself instead of from the client. Yeah, that is coming. And then we shipped OpenTelemetry for tracing, sorry, for metrics. We are evaluating if we need to do it for tracing or not. If anyone is interested on that, on kind of having tracing emitted from the SDKs, let us know. We're still figuring out if that's a use case that is important enough for us to support. And we'll want to implement logging in the future on the SDK level 2. And also audit logs, and then you also see some caching in the SDK. So most of the things that we are discussing here are things we've been sharing with you in the meetings. So no big news. Next slide, Kelly, please. I cannot move to the next slide myself. Yeah, thank you. So this is something we've seen a few companies started building integrations for RAG use cases. So this is the scenario where you have a chatbot, you want to enrich the conversation with that specific user using specific documents, and enrich the answer that the chatbot can provide with those documents. In general, the documents that you want to use to enrich the conversation are documents that you have access to, right? And that I shouldn't get all the documents in my company to kind of enrich the conversation, because I will have information that I shouldn't be able to see, only the ones I have access to. So that is a pretty interesting use case for authorization, because it's basically an authorization problem and that you can solve with FGA. And we've seen like some articles from different companies trying to do that with OpenFGA. And there's one for this one, another one for a MongoDB vector use case using a similar approach. And this is a use case that is very interesting for us for obvious reasons. So we keep, if you have something like this that you're working on, let us know, because we'd like to learn more and see how we can better help you here. And we've been presenting OpenFGA in a few conferences. This is something that happened last month. Jose Carlos presented in the Open Source Summit in Europe. Presentation is already live. If you go to the OpenFGA channel in YouTube, there's a playlist with all the community presentations. This one is there. So if you're interested, you can look at this one and other ones that were presented over time. So, there's next slide, please. Kia will be presenting this month, sorry, in Atlanta about OpenFGA in the Fusion event. So that's another Linux Foundation event. And then next slide, and I'll be in KubeCon with a few other people talking about OpenFGA too. So if you're going to be in Salt Lake City for KubeCon, reach out and we can geek out about authorization together. And I think that's it. Have any questions or comments, let us know. And for audit locker link, yes, if you go to that roadmap item that we have, there's there a document, some specifications or explanation of what we're going to do. Please check it out and let us know how you think. You can comment there or reach out in the Slack directly. Okay, great. So I think that's it for today. If you have any more questions, these are the ways you can engage with us. I guess you hopefully already know them, but if not, take notes and reach out to us, mainly in our Slack channel in the CNCF Slack.
Thanks so much for your time today, guys.
Thank you. Have a good one.